Kelly here, and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be doing some watercoloring with Distress inks. So I have some watercolor paper here. I've also pulled out the squared spring florals. There must be something about this stamp, like the way the florals are a little bit loose, that remind me of watercolor, because I'm pretty sure every card I've ever made with this set, which has been multiples because I am a big fan of it, has been a watercolor card. But nonetheless, let's get into it. So I'm also doing a bit of a emboss resist. I find that the heat embossing gives me I like the little wells it gives me for the colors to sit, and also it's very easy. It's a super simple technique, whether you are a beginner or more intermediate, because there's a couple of ways that you can kind of amp it up and get really great results. So I am treated it with my anti-static tool. I'm stamping in our brilliant white pigment ink, and then I am going to add on some white detail embossing powder. I do like to stamp mine twice, and I like to put my embossing powder on twice, just to make sure that I have a really good coverage. So I am stamping that down, plus with watercolor paper, because it is a little bit more textured, even if you're stamping on the smooth side, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get a good impression. So doing it twice really makes sure that we have something that we're like an image that we're going to be happy with. And then I find using a detail embossing powder where it's really, really fine gives me the best results. So I've stamped two of these. We're going to make two different cards, because one of them we're going to watercolor with our ink pads, and one of them we're going to watercolor with our ink refills. And so here, these are the colors I've picked: Peacock Feathers, Mowed Lawn, Picked Raspberry, and Spiced Marmalade. And then I have all the refills for that. And we're going to start first with the ink pads. So full transparency, I thought that I was going to do the watercolor flowers on a watercolor background. And so that's what you see me doing over here to the left, is the watercolor background. I didn't actually end up using those. I will use them in the future. I've kind of set them aside, and maybe we could do, I don't know, maybe we'll do something with them. With some other florals, because now I have them and I'm certainly not going to waste them. But I left it in just so you could kind of see how they came together. But you can see now we're sped up quite a bit. So basically, when you're taking the ink from the ink pad, like we're smushing them down into our work surface, a craft mat or a glass mat. In my case, it is a glass mat. But then we can pick the color up with our paintbrush. So I wet the entire background, and then I'm just kind of picking up the color and dropping it in using a wet paintbrush. But this is a much more subdued color. So all watercolor dries back a bit softer. And also you'll see me kind of splattering colors. It's just because I really like a lot of color variation. And so I find that splattering the colors gives me a really organic way to have the colors integrate. And so then I just dropped in some color. I'm going to do the same thing now over here. This one will not be sped up because this is part of the card that we actually use. And so here is the emboss resist here. I am dropping in the colors right over that embossing, and you can see the pattern of the florals start to kind of emerge. I am trying to pay a little bit of attention about dropping the ones next to each other that will work well, because this is two sets of complementary colors. So the orange and the teal, the yellow orange and the teal, and then the yellow green and the pink, they're two sets of complementary colors, which means they're going to look great together. They're all going to be beautiful. And this totally screams summer to me. We'll come back to that in a minute. But So I do want to be conscientious about not just like throwing them all just willy-nilly, because mixing complementary colors can give you brown, and I certainly don't want brown florals. Not saying that you can't use that for something. It's just not the look I was going for this particular card. So I know that I can mix the pink and the orange and the pink and the teal, the orange and the pink, and then the orange and the green even will be okay because they have that yellow base. The teal and the green and the teal and the pink. So like there's a couple of different things I know that they can work. Now, does that mean that I never have orange next to my teal or I never have pink next to my green? No, of course not. I don't try to mix them. So if they're next to each other, I'm not manipulating that area a bit. I'm just letting them kind of do their thing. So now, once I have everything down and I've added the amount of color that I wanted, around the florals. Now, remember, I don't need to fill the whole thing up because I'm going to die cut them out. But then I do like to go back in and add in a bit more color into the florals as well as the leaves to help them kind of stand out from the background. But this generally is going to give us a much softer look because once they dry back, it won't be super bold color. It will be very soft, very spring-like, more on the pastel side of things, which is pretty. There isn't like this one's right and this one's wrong, or this one's better and this one's worse. These are just two different ways to use your Distress inks to watercolor and get two very different looks. So I am using I think it's a number 2 round brush. These are the fine watercolor brushes from Altenew. And here it doesn't really, the other one is the just like a 1-inch flat brush. You don't have to use a certain size brush. I just find that especially with like the leaves and things, working with a smaller size brush, it's easier to kind of like drop that in there. But there is no saying that you have to drop them exactly into the flowers, or into the flower centers or into the leaves. Like you can do whatever you want with it. This is just the approach that I typically take. I like the flowers or the leaves to stand out from the background, so I do try to make those a bit darker, so that they stand out. That is the main difference, which you'll see here shortly as we kind of wrap this one up, between the two, because the Reinkers are more concentrated. I mean, they're meant to ink the whole ink pad. So like one drop is much more concentrated color, which allows us to get much bolder color faster. Could we get the same result using the ink pads? Maybe we could get close, but it would require us to do layer after layer after layer. So when we're looking for bolder color, which, let's be honest, with me, 9 times out of 10, I am, I am looking for bolder color. Then the refills, the reinkers are going to be a way for me to very, very quickly get a lot of saturated color onto my paper. So here already you can see that going in, we already have the intensity. It's much, much more intense. Now, again, this is the part that I didn't end up using, that we'll use maybe in a future video. But you can see how much bolder, how much darker it is with a lot less work. Here I found my paper to be getting a little bit dry as I was going. So I just have a mister. I just sprayed it with some water and helped it to move around. If you find, like, you can see that pink in the bottom left, like how it's got a really hard edge. That's because my paper's dry. So I'm going to add a little bit more water and then, add a little bit more pigment to kind of break that up, do my little splatters, and then we'll move on to the florals doing the same thing. adding the water all over the surface of the watercolor paper, and then we'll be able to go in and drop in the color. The technique is the same. Once I put the color where I want, I will still go back in and drop more color into the florals for it to kind of hold into those embossed wells. But the outcome is very different. One much softer, one much bolder. So again, it just depends on what kind of look you're going for. So with that said, I do want to mention that if you have been on the fence about whether or not you wanted to join the color theory for card makers class, the introduction to color theory for card makers starts tomorrow. I can't believe it's already here. I'm super excited. I'm super excited. So if you have been kind of on the fence, you're not too late. And then of course it will be available for purchase, forever. It'll always be available on my website for you to pick up if at a later date you would like to do it. Most of the lessons are pre-recorded. There is just a live stream that will take place this coming Saturday. That's the only part of it that's really like live and interactive. Outside, of course, there's a Facebook group where we can interact with each other and ask questions and show pictures and all those things. But that will also be available for view if you decide to purchase it later as a self-paced class. So here, this is where I'm going back in, picking up that color, dropping it back in. I'm pretty much keeping it tone on tone. So wherever I put down the pink, I'm dropping the pink into those flowers. Or wherever I put down the peacock feathers, the teal, I'm doing it the same way. But you don't have to do it like that. And I've done other cards. If this is like watercoloring with Distress Inks is something you're interested in, and you would be interested in seeing like how you could step it up from here, with different techniques, let me know. Leave me a comment, and I'd be happy to kind of revisit some of those things. I think that watercoloring with your dye inks is a great way to get more out of what you have. I happen to have a whole collection of Distress Inks because that's where I invested my money early on. I feel like they can do a lot of things that other inks cannot do. So that's where I chose to invest my money. But you can really do this with any dye ink. Most of them are water soluble, so they're not solvent based, they're water based. So you would be able to watercolor with them. So now here I wanted to show you, of course, that the Reinker, because it has so much color, like you, even from one little drop, which is all we put down, you still have quite a bit. I'm not going to waste that. This is like a half a sheet of watercolor cardstock. And I'm just going to spray that down, wet my paper, and then dip it in. And then however it comes out, and I'll set that to the side. So we have like a third sheet even that we can use to create more cards. So I'm sure that I will probably use that in a video. Here I have some, I think this is Tranquil. Why do I say it weird when I'm trying to say teal? Why do I say that? It's Tranquil Teal from Gina K, and the other one is Passionate Pink. And so I just picked two sentiments out of the set. The happy birthday, because I always need a birthday card, and then the other one says you're so kind, because I feel like I would get probably more use out of that. I stamped them down using the same thing, the brilliant white pigment ink, and then the heat setting them with that white detail. I'm going to cut those out. The actual florals you can cut out just around the floral and leave the middle, or you can cut out the middle, which honestly is great if you want to turn it into a shaker card. I think that's a really fun way to make them interactive. I am going to cut out both pieces. So I'm going to cut out the center as well as the outside, and I'm going to do them together just by taping them to themselves. And then here is the way that I originally intended the card to look. And it's not that I dislike it, I just didn't love it with the sentiments. So here you can see I'm kind of laying those out. Maybe if I had put a pink square in the middle, maybe that would have been, or a teal square, that would have been something that would be like more of what I was envisioning. But instead, I actually just nixed the backgrounds, and I did trim them down just a little bit so that the floral was right up against the edge to see if that would kind of change my mind. And again, I don't dislike them. I thought that they looked better once here because I like a lot of contrast. Yeah, I mean, that's no surprise. Once I put them together here, that's the bold with the Reinkers, I was like, yeah, that's the way I'm going. So I chose to mount them then on the teal and the pink. You don't have to die cut out the sentiments if you don't want to. I could have just stamped them down inside. The only point where that would have been a little bit of an issue is the happy birthday. When I put that card together for a different look, I flipped the florals upside down. So they're intended to cascade down from the top left to the bottom right. I flipped it so that they're working their way up the card. So from the bottom right to the top left. So the happy birthday doesn't fit as well as it could because of the florals that kind of come into those squares. So anyway, I like them both, but I do prefer the teal one that has like that bolder color with more of a contrast. You could also do this. I think it would be really fun, like doing this kind of color, this kind of watercolor with a black outline, and then mounting it on a white cardstock, so that you have that black, white, and then a pop of these kind of more fun summery colors. So there's a couple of different ways that I could have done it, but I'm happy with the way that they came out. So yeah, so I've been working on the class. I will have some other videos up, and obviously I'll be doing my regular live, my Honeybee Live on Wednesday. And so it's been a little bit crazy and hectic. We did have, we went to Disney on Ice. We're almost done with the video, so I'll have to save that story for another time, but it was great. Super, super fun. Very, very cold to get there, but that's a part of the funny story in and of itself. So I did go in with a little bit of clear gloss, like shimmer pen. This can reactivate your, Distress inks because they reactivate with water, so just be aware of that when you're kind of moving. I didn't have a ton of issues. And then I also used my Stardust stickles inside the centers of all of my flowers to add a little bit of glitter. I am using 2 different gemstones, which, by the way, these are on sale over on the Honeybee website. I'm using Let's Party and Adventure Awaits. And then I also used a couple of the iridescent ones to add to just a couple of the flower centers, just for some more shimmer and shine. I didn't put it on all of them because I had also that glitter, that Stardust stickles, to add to the glitter, but I did add it some, just for some more shimmer. So that's it. That's both cards. I hope it inspires you to, get your Distress inks out and try some watercoloring. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video. Bye.